All right, hey everybody, welcome to another painting Q&A with yours truly, Sam Healey. Welcome to our Monster Fight Club YouTube channel. We have a lot of cool stuff on here. Basically, a lot of it's really kind of tailored towards painting. We offer a lot of miniatures. We offer a lot of scenery that you can do a lot of painting on and kind of make it your own. So that's one of the reasons why we have a lot of painting videos here, but we are going to be branching into other things. We've got a couple of games that are really close to coming down the pipe. Combat Zone, Cyberpunk Red Combat Zone, and Borderlands, Mr. Torg's Arena of Badassery. So all of those are going to be generating more videos, I would imagine, down the stretch. So keep your eyes open for those. But for right now, we are going to be kind of focusing on painting in this video. Now, it is a Q&A, so you can absolutely ask questions, and when I see them in the chat, I will answer them to the best of my ability, and those questions can be about anything you'd like for them to be about. They can be about what we're doing on the live stream right now as far as painting these scenery pieces. It can be about, me. It can be about Monster Fight Club. It can be about one of the products that we offer. And I'll do the best that I can to answer the question to the best of my ability. So I want to say thank you for joining me one more time. I do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to spend a few moments here with me. Now, let's see. We do have a little bit going on here. I just want to make sure I'm going good. All right, it looks like we are good to go. All right, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get to it. What we're doing today is we're going to be painting the Unpainted Pine Forest set that you see here in front of you. Now, there are 7 kind of pine tree pieces. Then you also have 3 trunks. One that's a broken trunk that's kind of just there, and we're gonna be painting that one as well. And then you have 2 trunks that these trees actually sit upon. Now, how do these actually fit in? Well, as you can see here, if you look down there, you see a little hole that is in the middle of these. So any one of these can kind of just sit on top of there like that. And they don't necessarily snap in, but they do kind of pop in there so that they're pretty solid. And as you can see, any of them, you can have a shorter tree, you can have a larger tree, whatever you think would be to your liking. Now, these can actually also stack on top of them. So you take this larger one here and kind of put that larger one there. Then you stack one on top of it like this, and now you have a multi-layered pine tree that's there. You can also just use these for kind of like the smaller kind of bushes type thing, and you can just set them on the ground like that. And it looks like I don't know. I don't know that I've seen too many of these out in the wild, but who cares, right? Maybe you have a really small one that looks something like that. Whatever you'd like to do, really, it's up to you. What we're going to do, these are unpainted. So they're made of a dark brown plastic for the trunk, and then they also have a dark green plastic for the tree leafy parts. All right, so we're going to be painting these so that they look a little bit more like trees and not just hunks of plastic. Now, here's the thing. These look decent, all right? If that tree was just standing out there on your table, you can see the texture at a table's distance. You can see the texture. You can see that it's supposed to be wood. These leafy parts, you can see the textures. You can see that it's supposed to be mimicking a tree. So these are not bad as is. But if you're buying this kind of scenery, by the way, we offer painted versions of these as well on our website. So you can buy the unpainted or you can buy the painted versions of these trees, and they look pretty good as well. All you have to do is take them out of the box, slap them on the table, you're good to go. These unpainted ones, you can do the same thing. These look pretty stinking good. as they are right out of the box. But if you want to add a little bit of pizzazz, a little bit of flair, you can absolutely do that, and it's not that difficult to do at all, which is why we're doing this video today. We're doing this video so that you can see how easy it is to take unpainted scenery, because you can buy a lot of unpainted scenery in a lot of different places. You can also buy it from us, but you can take that unpainted scenery and make it your own very easily. It's not that difficult. Will take some practice. It will take some time, maybe a few more resources so you can buy some of the supplies that are necessary, but you can do it. That's one of the things that I hear the most about from people who are looking at things that have been painted, whether they're miniatures or canvases or what have you. And a lot of people just have it in their minds, I could never do something like that. And while I understand that there are some people that have an ability or an extra ability or something to that effect, some attention to detail or whatever, and some people will be better at it, one of the things that I like to say is you can do it. You can do it because humans are amazing, you know. And I'm not trying to be too philosophical here, but humans are amazing. You will surprise yourself what you're able to do if you just set your mind to it. And often I think we cut ourselves short by simply saying, you know, I could never do something like that without even trying. So reason we have these videos, the reason that Dan and I have done the Painting Minis with Dan and Sam series is because we want you to see that just with a little bit of practice, a little bit of time, and a little bit of money spent on supplies, you can do this stuff. It's not that difficult. Will it look as good as some other people's? Maybe not. Will it look as good as Duncan? Is it Duncan Rhodes? Is that his name from Games Workshop? He used to be Games Workshop. No, probably not. But here's the thing: it doesn't have to look that good. Those guys do. Sarastro does a great job. These guys are phenomenal. I'll watch a lot of their videos. But at the end of the day, what you need on your table does not have to be that level of expertise. It can be something that, if it looks good to you, fine and dandy. That's all we need, right? And often, you know, you have people that are looking at miniatures like this, and they're like, wow, this is so nice, I can't believe. And then you do the same thing to something you've painted, and I'm like, well, this is not that great. I can't believe I made so many mistakes. And that's bad. What I heard, I think Dan was telling me that he heard somebody else say, if you want to see how good your miniature looks, and if you want to see if you're happy with it, set it on the table, sit back, and look at it. Look at it from a table's width. What you're normally going to be looking at the miniatures, that's how you need to judge how your miniature looks. If it looks great like this, sitting on the table that far away from you, it looks good then. Now, that's not to minimize any of the work that those other really good miniature painters do. Not minimizing that at all. They're phenomenal, they're awesome, and they're great fun to watch. But if you're just starting out, put it out on the table and look at it that way. If you're happy with it, you're good to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that, and hopefully we'll have some questions, we'll have some interactions later on, but we're going to do that. Blake, Blake just says Sam. Yes. Can you hear me? Please tell me you can hear me. Oh my gosh. I'm dumb. I checked everything. I swear I did. I just have this thing. Because I've done it so many times where I get halfway into, 10 minutes into the thing. And somebody says, hey, by the way, we can't hear you. And I'm like, well, poop. But hopefully you guys can see and can hear, and we're good to go. Let me just check. Yeah, you can. All right. Good. Made my heart jump a little bit there. All right. Last week, We did. Let me put it back here. Sorry, don't. I'm not gonna make you seasick. Switching angles. We'll get to the table here in a little bit. Last week, when I was doing, they're right here actually. When we did these guys, these were the unpainted. Oh, the name just Unpainted Forest, I think is what I said. These are Unpainted Pine Forest. So the Unpainted Forest, this is what we did last week. And we used 3 different colors on all of these. 3 different shades of brown for the wood, and then 3 different shades of green for the foliage of the trees. And this is what they came out to look like. Super good. I'm not trying to boost my own ego there. I'm just really happy with it. So it's super good for me. Whether it looks good to you, that's... that's kind of important. I hope it looks good to you, because I don't want to do a crappy job and have that be the standard here. But I'm just trying to reiterate the fact I enjoy it. I thought it looked great, so it's super good in my opinion. Now we used 3 colors last week to do those things. This week I'm only going to do 2 colors. With the caveat being that this stump right here, we're going to try to make it look like there's some. Like this was freshly broken stump. So we're going to put some skeleton bone in here to make it look like, it's more of a recent breaking of that tree or something to that effect. Now, but I'm only going to use 2 paints. We're going to use Goblin Green, and then we're also going to use Snake Scales. If you watched the last week, Snake scales really pulled those trees together. I'm probably going to use it a little bit less because I do want that rich green pine look for the trees to have. But we're going to use Goblin Green and not Orc Skin. I think I used Orc Skin last week, and it really didn't have a whole lot of differentiation between that color. So I wanted a little bit more differentiation so that this dark green is really there, but it's the shadow. And we're going to use these 2 for the highlights. So you technically still have 3 colors. The dark green of the plastic, and then you have the 2 shades of green that I've chosen. So I guess you could say you had 4 colors last week, but I guess I might be getting a little bit too specific there. But let's go ahead and get to it. I'm going to be using a Citadel medium dry brush for my brush today. It's the same one I used last week. You just want to make sure that it's still, you clean your brushes out after each session so that the bristles stay nice and healthy. One of the things that some painter friends of mine have done is they put a little bit of dish soap in their water so that it kind of conditions and it keeps that bristle soft. I've noticed sometimes that it depends on the brush, of course, and the bristle, but sometimes it makes your bristles curl a little bit, especially if you don't, if you're not careful with how you store them. So, because that's a mistake that I've made. So be careful with that. I usually just used tap water, and it may or may not be good depending on what region of the country you're in. Maybe you have harder water or softer water. That's up to you. But we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with this little big, the big trunk of the tree first, and then we'll go from there. So let's get all this stuff off camera here, and we'll get going. All right. So, well, before we get down there, let me go ahead and show you what we're going to do. Last week, Veteran Leather was a very cool addition, and that was kind of something that I chose to do at the last minute. Leather Brown is going to be our coat that goes on first. We're still, like the trees, going to use this dark brown color as the shadowy part of the trunk, and then we'll start with highlighting some Leather Brown, and then we're also going to highlight with some Veteran Leather as well, and it gives a pretty good wood look. So let's go ahead and get down. Now, what we're going to do, I keep saying that, then I remember I got to do something. So what you got to do here is you got to fill your brush full of the paint that you're going to use, and then you're going to pull most of it out onto a piece of paper, a cloth, or something to that effect, to pull most of that color out of there. And then you're going to use that to kind of go over, and we'll show the different brush techniques that you can use to kind of get different effects. But we want to leave this base color there. We don't want to fully cover all of this. We're just wanting to touch the higher tips of the mold. So you'll see what we're doing here, but we're going to start off with some leather brown. You do want to give your paints a good shake before you go, just so all of the elements of the paint in there kind of mix up, and you've got paint. You don't have you know, the medium that's not mixing with the actual paint that's in there. So you want to give it a good shake before you put it into your palette. Now you can use wet palettes. You'll have to watch somebody else on how to do that. I usually don't use a wet palette. I know they're good, and I know they work well. I just have never used them. I just picked these little guys up at Hobby Lobby for like 99 cents for a pack of 10 or something like that, and they work well. So use one of the little holes here and put some of that in there, and then you're good to go. Well, that usually doesn't happen, but hey, things happen, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. Just a quick cleanup here, and we'll continue going. It's a good thing we have all this down here though, because that would be all over my table. And as it is right now, these are water-based, so they're going to come off pretty good. But this is what happens sometimes. So now you know that this isn't scripted. Oh boy. All right. Well, there you have it. Well, I have plenty of leather brown. I'm going to have to be picking some more of that up later on, I guess. But there you have it. Well, if that's all that happens bad today, well, I guess we're good. All right. So, starting off here, like I said, you want to get that brown into the brush as much as possible. I'm not going to stick it. Try not to get the paint on the actual black part of the brush, or of the actual, you know, plastic or metal part of the brush, whatever you're doing. But try to keep it just in the bristles, and then you're going to pull most of it out. Just so that whenever you pull this across, you're still leaving some of that paint down there, but not all of it. Now we're going to go down to the table here, and we've got this guy right here, and it's pretty much ready to go. So what you want to do with this is you just want to pull across the grain. You want to pull across the grain because you don't want to touch into all of those crevices that are in the paint, that are in the mold. So you're just kind of easing this on there. You can use a faster technique like I'm doing here, or you can just, you know, go back and forth, or you can pull in one direction, then pull in the other direction a little bit. It's whatever you'd like to do. All you're really trying to do here is provide highlights on those upper ridges of the model, because this works with miniatures as well, as you are going along. So, but you do want to get kind of a good covering of those ridges. So, you know, changing the direction that you paint it in is important. But you also want to make sure that you're not covering into all of those recesses. I'm going to use some of the stuff that we spilled so it doesn't go to waste, and just pull it out. All right. And the amount of paint you have on your brush will be evident on those first few strokes. Sometimes you may want to maybe test it on, a lot of people use their skin. A lot of painters I've seen use their skin as a test to see how much paint's going to come out of there. because sometimes it's hard to tell with just your eyes. But anyway, we've got this going on, and now we're going to kind of start working up the trunk here a little bit. And the kind of brush pattern or brush strokes that you use is really kind of up to you. Whatever you think is most comfortable. And we're going up that trunk, and we're leaving those recesses though, because we want those shadows to stand out. All right, and you got to change directions sometimes based on what direction those limbs are going at. But as you can see, you can already kind of tell that there's a little bit more life, so to speak, going into this trunk because of just this one color that we've added onto it. It looks a little bit more like an actual tree trunk and less like a just a piece of plastic that is in the shape of a tree trunk. So that's what we're going for. All right, time to get a little bit more paint in there. Make sure you fill the brush up and then pull it out. And as you go on here, you don't really have to, I said this a lot last week, but there's really not a right or wrong answer here as far as what you're doing and how you do it. All I'm giving you is an example where you can start. If you find out as you continue painting that something else works better for you, then have at it, you know, because at the end of the day, this isn't really about me. This is about you finding your groove. You know what I mean? So just take your time. When you're getting that, like for example with these, when you're getting on the trunk here, try to go sideways against the grain of this pattern, because that's where it's going to leave those grooves and those darker recesses, and that's what you really want out of this. Alright, this guy's pretty much done with this color. Now the good thing about this is that I'm going to go ahead and leave this out here, and here is one that's unpainted right next to it, so you can kind of see the difference. It's lighter, of course, because we use a lighter brown, but at the same time, you also have those recesses that are really kind of showing up at this point. So here you have the two standing beside, and now we're going to continue on with this one. And that raises the next point. The next point in this that I really wanted to make is that this does not take a whole lot of time, because once you start going on this, you are pretty much going to be able to just continue going with the same color, the same brush. You don't even really have to wash your brush out unless you want to. You can. You don't want your brush to ever look like it's clumping up with paint. So if that's the case, you do want to try to stop and take some time and clean your brush out there, and then you can continue going on. But as you can see, as we work up this post here, this is not taking a whole lot of time, and we're getting the same effect that we did on the other one. And that's really what you also want to be looking for, is making sure that you have a degree of uniformity going into each element, because you don't necessarily want all of these different tree trunks and everything to look different than the other ones, because they're all growing in the same forest, right? So they tend to take on very similar attributes in that respect. But again, just trying to do the best you can. pause and get some more paint into your brush, wipe it back out, and continue on. I'm going to go ahead and get all of these branches that are sticking out here so that I can focus more on the trunk itself as I'm going up. But again, it's whatever you want to do, whatever works best for you. That's what's important. Okay, and I go back, change my direction to side again because I'm going back to that trunk, and I need that direction to kind of get it out. All right, looking pretty good. Not looking bad at all. There we go. That's the second one done. Pull these back a little bit so you can see how they're coming out. And then I try to find, there he is. All right, and this guy is going to be kind of the same thing. Sometimes you'll also find that, I just realized I was a lot of dead air. I apologize for that. Sometimes you'll find that as you go back and some of that paint kind of gets out of your brush, but some of it stays there. The paint that you've applied will dry a little bit darker than when it actually goes on. So if you go over it and you continue going over it, you'll actually provide a good bit of highlighting, and it'll look pretty stinking good. And it's almost like just something that you gotta work at a little bit. This is one of the things that you can kind of practice on your own and go from there. But you'll see that it kind of works pretty good there. And that's all of the brown. And now if we wanted to stop right there, we could. We could absolutely stop right there. And this would be pretty good, because if you sit back and look at it, it looks pretty stinking good. As far as wanting it to look like a tree, wanting it to look like the wood that it is, it's pretty good. But if you wanted to add another layer of differentiation, so to speak, you definitely can do that with just a lighter shade of brown, which is or a different shade of brown, which is what we're going to go to next. Now, before we do that, though, I am going to use some skeleton bone and try to get the inside of the tree to look a little bit like it's brand new. So we're going to need to get a different brush, and we'll just use a small base brush for that. I had to sneak away from the camera. I apologize. So the difference, let me just show you real quick. The difference between the two brushes is right here. So you have a base brush, very thick bristle, flat on the edge, and then you have this base brush, which it has a thinner, a more rounded bristle, but it is also not flat. It's also pointed. So you have these two guys that are here, and you can see the difference there. All right, so this is our dry brush, and we're going to put that down for a second. And we're going to use this base brush, and we're going to get some of the skeleton bone in there. I need to shake that up a little bit. Hopefully we don't have a blowout like we did on the last one. And we won't need a whole lot of paint, just a little bit. So all I'm doing with this one now, I want the paint to be in there because I am actually wanting to transfer most of this color to the actual inside of this trunk. So as we're looking at this here, you just have to kind of look at the trunk and see what you think is going to have that lighter color on it and what isn't. So again, this is one of those places where this is less about what is a right or wrong answer and more about where you think that color would actually live. All right, so this is a little bit more of the, and again, you don't want to get all of those pieces in there looking like they are, but at the same time, like they are the inside of the tree. But man, what is that called? Gosh, maybe a couple of these things here, out here, and down in there too. Not a whole lot, because you do want some of that shadow effect to stay in there. So use some of that brown that's around it though to kind of just stay there, because you don't want to break out all of it. But this trunk was maybe split a while ago. Don't know. Little bit in there. Maybe not a whole lot, but oh, see, I made a mistake, but we'll come back and fix it. We'll get it. All right, so there you have that. It's kind of there. And now, a few more touches here and there. A little bit, not a whole lot. Okay. I think we're pretty good to go there. Good to go. So this is basically, Nerd in the North says, this is basically the metal version of happy painting, right? Yeah, we'll go with that. I'm good with that. Even if it's not necessarily a metal version, I'm still good with it. Now, what we can do here, because maybe this has a little bit too stark of a differentiation to it, now we can go back and maybe with some of that leather brown that we've already used, we can go back and just lightly brush across some of these, and hopefully it'll pull some of that color together. Not a whole lot, but just some of it, so that it's not all that bone color that's meant to look like, hopefully it looks like, and while we're here, we can kind of lightly do some of the stuff that we've already done to pull some of that together. Now, another thing you can do that we might do, I don't want to get too technical here. I want to try to keep this as easy as possible. But what you could do is maybe put a little bit of wash in there to darken in that lighter color. But again, I think it's all right. I think it's good the way it is. And we're going to go on to our next color. And our final color for the wood is going to be this veteran leather. And it has a little bit of an orange hue to it, but I really like how it made the other trees look as a final highlight to the wood. So that's what we're going to do finally for the wood here today. Oops, forgot to give it a shake. So we're going to go ahead and do that a little bit. Let me get these back in screen so that you can see them. And we're good to go. Now, this is going to be a final highlight, so we're not going to use a whole lot of paint for this one. We're probably only going to go with one, get this in there for once, the color in the brush, I mean, and then we're going to use that for all three of these pieces because we don't want a whole lot of paint going on here. So we're just going to pull this on, and not a whole lot, but just a few strokes in each direction so that you're getting kind of both sides of that, all those ridges there, and you can already see how it's kind of really making that pop a little bit, because just a little bit of a differentiation there, but it still has that brown hue to it, even though it's kind of orangey. And I think that works out pretty well. So you have, there's that one, and then I'm going to come back and just lightly, I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure here. You might be able to see that there's less of that paint going in between these different the different spokes on this root system here, and that's kind of what I want. I want those roots to kind of stand out a little bit. Real light on going up the trunk here of the tree, and then just lightly going on all of these branches, not really spending a whole lot of time on each one, because again, you just want that hint of color here. You don't really want more than that. But I like how this color pulls that wood look really to the surface, because it just, I don't know, I just like how it contrasts well with that darker color there. So here you have the difference. You have this one right here with just the leather brown on it. And then you have these two over here that have that veteran brown color to it, so you can kind of see the difference. But I lied earlier. We are going back with one more dip in the paint, just so that we make sure we do get good coverage on this last one here. So. And hopefully this is coming through, that this is not a difficult thing, because that's really what I want to show here. I really want to show you guys and gals that this is not difficult. It's not intense. It's not anything. This is almost like it's almost zen, because it's like, this is relaxing. It can be really relaxing, and it gives you that feeling that even though I said this last week, even though you didn't create the plastic, even though you didn't create the mold, it still gives you the idea. It still gives you the feeling that, hey, I've created something here. I've made something look the way that I want it to look. And this is kind of a low-key way to kind of fill that void that we have inside of us, of wanting to create, wanting to, that desire, not really a void, a desire to create, to be artistic. And this can really do a good job of filling that need, that desire in your life. All right, so we're pretty much done with the wood now. Hopefully you can tell, Hopefully you understand. Not difficult. Not difficult at all. We're going to let that rest in there for a little bit. And this is pretty much done. We're done with the wood parts. Now we're going to move on to the green tree parts of the trees. So these turned out pretty good indeed. I like it. The mold does a lot of the work for you, as long as you control the amount of paint that's in your brush, and we're doing that by pulling most of it out before we take the brush to the actual model. But the mold is really good, and it will do most of the work for you, because it'll just catch the paint on those top parts, leave the darker brown or the darker green we're about to see in those crevices, and provide shadow. I'm letting my brush rest in the water a little bit so we can get most of that brown out of there, most of that paint out of there, so it doesn't start clumping up. And we're going to start getting the goblin green ready now, because that's going to be the first highlight color that we use for the green. Let's see here. Okay. And when you start hearing it kind of slosh around in there, that's a good indication that you're almost ready. Almost ready. So you can kind of open it up. That might be need a little bit more shaky. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, I think we're good. Put that out there. And I think we've got enough in there to where we're good to go. Try to get all that water out of there, because the water, with these water-based paints, the water will thin your paint, and sometimes you want that. That's absolutely something that you want to do. You want to make sure you have nice, even, thin coats. So thinning out your paints is useful often, but sometimes not necessarily so. So just going to give one little stir here just to make sure all of those elements are good and mixed in. And at the same time, we're making sure we have a good amount of paint in that brush all over all those bristles. And now we're just going to pull that stuff out. Okay, that looks like it's good. All right, we're going to get these little guys out of the way. They've done their job. And now we're going to start working on one of these guys. Let's do the big one first. All right, so here we're just going to come across this, and again, what we're trying to do is just pull in on all of those raised areas. And this color here looks like it's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. And that is just to provide that first layer of highlight, that these things are pulling in from that dark. This lighter color green is pulling in a little bit of brilliancy on top of that darker green that's already there. And you can change your direction of the brush, and that will help you see where you might want to add a little bit more detail, a little bit more highlight. I think we're doing pretty good here. So I'm going to come back at it. And again, this is a really light coat. And I added a little bit more paint to it because I wanted a little bit more differentiation to some of this stuff than I was getting with that first pass. So you can always do that. If you feel like that first coat didn't do the trick that you wanted it to, put a little bit more paint in your brush, and leave a little bit more in there than you did the first time when you pull it out, and then have at it again. That's one of the things about this dry brush technique, is that it is pretty forgiving to a degree. You have to, once you have some practice at it and you've spent some time, then it's kind of forgiving. But it can be a little daunting on the onset, in the onset. But I think you guys will be able to nail it after just a few short tries and a little bit of practice. This is coming together pretty good, I think. Is this how we get happy trees? That is exactly how we get happy trees. This is how we do it. So I'm going to do one final go, I think. And this one I'm just going to pull down off of the model because I just want to hit some of those branches that maybe didn't get a whole lot the first couple of times, but we want to get some of those things highlighted a little bit. All right, that's not bad. All right, so you have the first. This is what it looks like right out of the box, so to speak, and this is with one coat of goblin green on it. All right, so as you can see, and this is kind of a point I made earlier, this is not bad, and you could go ahead and just let it hit the table just like this. But maybe you want a little bit more pizzazz, maybe you want a little bit more oomph, so to speak, to how it looks, and you can add more colors and more highlights to it. But really, how much you add is up to you, because it's how you want it to look, not how anybody else wants it to look. All right. So I'm gonna fill up my brush again with this goblin green. Wipe some of it out. Now we're going to start hitting. I'll move that one here forward a little bit. Now we're going to start hitting this one. And this I might actually do first, pull down first, and see if I like that better. And this is kind of what we were talking about earlier, changing it around and doing a couple of different things and see how it works out for you. I think as a first pass, I didn't like how that went. Well, I think it might be better to just come at it sideways and then have that last pass be the one where you have a lot of downstrokes. So that you kind of catch more of the tree needles this way than you do coming straight down on it like this. So that's something to keep in mind. A little bit more color. Pull it out. And let's come at it light and easy as we come in here. And like I said on the last one, the mold really does a lot of the work for you. All you're really doing is kind of monitoring how that paint is coming out onto the mold and adjusting accordingly. That's really all you're doing when you're using this kind of a dry brush technique. And if you just keep spinning it and turning it, I think you'll see that it'll come together for you relatively easily. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more downs on this so we can catch some of those. Now, I'm also not being very traditional on how I'm holding my brush either. So, but again, that is something that you just kind of have to figure out on your own. I would kind of keep it in almost like a pencil grip, but if you feel something else is more comfortable, then you do that. Alright, I think that one's ready to go now too. Let's see here. Seriously though, this is actually encouraging. It doesn't look at all difficult. The trees might be a great practice for other minis. Yeah, that would be probably good. I would actually, if you want to try to get started on something like that, well, I've been center this whole time. My bad. Um, no, I'm going to go back. The best thing, I'm going to let this sit in the water for a little bit. The best thing I think you can do to practice if you're just starting like brand new on painting is buy some army men, plastic army men, and give a go on those guys, because you spend, you know, $1, $2, something like that, $3, and you get like 50 army, you get 50 things that you can paint, and you're $3 in the hole for it. That's what I would do first. Now, I think what you'll do, what you'll find is if you can get those army men to look pretty decent, getting miniatures that you buy from Monster Fight Club or Reaper or Games Workshop or anything like that, the way they will look, if you can get an army man to look good, the way these guys will look and the way our miniatures will look and other companies' miniatures will look, will be even better, and it'll be a lot easier because the detail of the molds will make it easier for you to make them look good. You know, there's not a whole lot of detail on an army man, but if you can get an army man to look pretty good, you'll find, I think, that doing it on these other miniatures is much easier because the detail is better. And that's kind of what I was talking about. The molds will do most of the work for you, especially with terrain. And if you want to practice your dry brushing techniques, terrain, as somebody has already said, is a great place to start because it is very unforgiving. Gaming with ADHD says, terrain is great for practicing. People expect less, and you get a lot of strange details. It's very true, very true. Usually recommend Reaper Bones. Yep. But it's the same reason. Reaper Bones gives you a lot of, I would say, a lot of miniatures that are more closely similar to what you would get from us or Games Workshop or anything like that, because they're more similar. You might find that getting an army man to look good is might be pretty difficult because the molds just aren't very detailed at all. With Reaper miniatures or Reaper Bones, it might be a better place, but they are more expensive. So it's what you'd like to do. All right, so let's go ahead and get some of these other guys painted. Those two are pretty much ready to go. Yeah, let's do this. Get my paint filled up here. Okay, and now just coming at it. Coming at you. Did I go back down? I hope I went back down. I hope I went back down to the table. I don't know that I did. Nope, I didn't. Nah. Fixed it. Fixed it. All right. And we're getting it. All right. All right. One last getting of this color, and I think after this we're going to move to doing the final shade of green on these three. That way you'll be able to kind of look at what we did on these three after it's all said and done, and then compared to what they look like out of the box, and that'll give you an idea of the kind of work you can accomplish in a really short amount of time. So this technique does not, it's kind of brutish, if I can say it that way, because there's not a whole lot of finesse, there isn't a whole lot of, you're just really kind of letting the mold do the work for you and catching the paint where it should and leaving the paint where it shouldn't be. All right, so that's the three. that will do. Let this rest in the water a little bit. I assume primed and a dark green layer before the dry brush. Actually, no. That's one of the things that I've done here. I did not prime these miniatures, these at all, because they come in a dark green already. So the dark green is already there. It was not primed. These are what they look like right out of the box. You don't. The last week I washed with soap and water, soap and warm water. I washed all of the stuff last week. This week, as a way of kind of testing whether I needed to do it or not, I did not wash these. And they are holding the paint pretty well. So washing your plastics before you put paint on them is usually a good rule of thumb, so to speak. You usually probably want to do that because you don't know if there's any resin left on there from the manufacturer or not. And if there is, it can mess up the paints that you are applying to it, and it can actually not hold the paint as well. So washing them usually gets most of that resin off so that the paint adheres to the plastic better. Even if you're talking about a base coat or what did you call it? A primer coat. But this time, no, I did not use any primer at all. I did not wash these at all. This time in, I guess I should have said that at the beginning, but you would have missed it. But these are just plastic right out of the box, and it's working pretty good. I think you can see that. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm really bad about washing first. Yeah, it's something that I know you should do it, but I usually don't, because most of the time, most of the miniatures that you buy, the resin, the manufacturers do a good job of washing them before, as they come off the line. But again, washing it as it comes off the line doesn't do as good of a job as you washing it with your hands in the sink or something to that effect. So there is that. It's a good rule of thumb, but it's not a necessary thing that you must do in order to achieve the proper effects and all that kind of stuff. So thank you for that question. That's a very good question, and I'm glad you brought it up because I did not address that at the beginning of the stream like I probably should have. Yeah. All right. Now, I think we have some pretty good delineation here on these look good. And if I put one of these little guys on here, that's a pretty stinking good looking pine tree right there. You know what I'm saying? Now this one has a couple of different coats on it. This one only has one coat of paint on it, that lighter shade of green. But as you can see, it looks pretty good. It definitely looks good at a table distance, as I was talking about earlier. So I think you get the idea that we could be done at this point. But yeah, no, let's go all in. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add another shade of green. We're going to use this snake scales green, and this is going to be a super light coating because we want that goblin green, which is what this was. This goblin green here, we want that to still be there. We want to still be able to see it. We want to see that shade effect, if I can use that word. So this coat is going to be a super light coat, still using the same techniques, still kind of using the same ideas that we've been employing so far in the video, but we're just going to maybe use less paint on the onset into the bristles, and then we're definitely going to make sure there isn't as much paint in the brush as we used the first time. So most of that paint's out of there, and we're just going to go at it. We'll start at the top, and maybe on this one I am just going to do downstrokes first to see how that looks. Yeah, I'm liking this. And again, this is just going down from top to bottom. You're just wanting to touch the parts of the mini or the parts of the mold where light would maybe normally be glistening off of these trees. Maybe you want to get a little bit of paint back in some of those recesses just so that you have some of those little bristles sticking out a little bit more than others. But really all you're doing here is you're providing more highlights to only some of those parts. You can still see that darker green that's underneath, but you also have this really bright green. I really like snake scale. This is a great color. And you can kind of just play around with it on some of those spots and maybe get in there a little bit further than that thing does, that first pass did. But again, it's really kind of up to you how you put that paint in there. But with me, I'm just kind of making sure it touches most of those super raised areas where I think most of that is going to pop. So there you have, that's the snake scale. This has the snake scale on it, and this one doesn't. So you can see the difference there, right? Makes me more inclined to pick some up eventually. They look great, and just that dry brush. Yeah, absolutely. So there you have it. I'll put those next to each other so you can see the difference while I work on this one. And pull most of it out. And we just go down from top to bottom. And this is really just kind of making sure that you're touching the highest surfaces by going this way, because you're pretty much letting the brush do whatever it wants to do, but you're still just hitting the top from the top to the bottom. So this really is, I think, the best method for me personally. Maybe you'll find something else that works better. And now I'm done with that. I can go back and maybe get a little bit in there, a little bit down in here on the edges. I really like having those edges highlighted well, but it's really what you want to do. So I think this is looking pretty good, pretty stinking good myself. All right. Yep. Looking great. And again, it's really just letting the model, letting oh goodness, the mold. There you go. Had model stuck in my mind, but it's really just letting the mold do the work for you. I've said that a lot, and I mean it. These molds are great, and they work really well, and they do their job really well. So you have the difference there. This is the one that just has the goblin green, and these two have the snake scales on it. But you kind of get the idea, right? I think it's pretty good. One last one, and then we'll probably be done. But I'll put these up here, and we'll get this guy done too. Just doing that top down first. And again, letting the mold pretty much do the work for you. And if you see, like on this one, I noticed that the top is really getting a lot of coverage because that's what's pulling most of the paint out. So maybe you just want to hold it now at the top and go around and make sure some of those other parts are getting some of that lighter shade green, so that they, you have more of that texture that's prevalent. So pretty stinking easy. Pretty stinking easy. Great results, and I don't mean to sound lazy, but minimal effort. And that's because the mold has such great detail in it. You can really allow it to do the work for you. And that's that. So Clyde Dashing looks gorgeous. Thank you. North looks great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really want to reiterate, however, that these look good, not because of any real inherent skill that's involved. The miniatures themselves, the models themselves, look really good to begin with. The molds are super good as far as that's concerned. But that is pretty much it for today. We are about an hour and 5 minutes in. So work that brush, brother. Yeah, Luke Pryor, my good friend at GameFound. Thank you for joining me. I certainly appreciate it, buddy. It's good to have you around. Perfect for a Norse horror setting or Christmas. That's right, man. Diversity is key. We want to cover all the bases, do we not? So I do want to hopefully impress upon you that this is not difficult. This is not hard to get stuff done. We've spent an hour, and really you won't take that long, because I'm sitting here talking and doing things and cleaning up a mess that I made. This will not, you will probably be able to finish the other 4 pieces that are in this set and everything else in under an hour. This does not take a long time. We're not talking about a huge time commitment. We're not talking about a huge investment or anything like that, because we used all of 5 paints, 1 brush, and like 9 cents for the palette that we used. So there you go. Luke says, I am off to a big war game fair in London tomorrow with a friend and Elliot. Ooh, Elliot is going to start his first army. Okay, Luke, you got to tell us, who is Elliot's first army going to be? Elliot is Luke's son. You underestimate my ability to take long. Yeah, that's true. If you find yourself to be leaning towards the perfectionist side, yes, you will take longer. But generally speaking, to get good terrain out on the table, it does not take a long time, even for the perfectionist, because once you've perfected your technique of dry brushing, it does not take a long time to get the effect that you want it to have. So there you have. Elliot's going with orcs. Yes! Wah! Go Elliot. That's awesome. I love orcs. I love painting orcs because they're so fun to paint. The models are so freaking chaotic. They're so fun to paint. So that's great to hear. I think he's going to have great fun with an orc army. That's super good. Tell him I'm rooting for him, please. Starting off with a skirmish version of a one-page rules fantasy, and we can build from there. Awesome. Awesome. Tell him I'm rooting for him. I think orcs are a great army. They were one of the 40k armies that I had. I had a Dark Angels army. I had Sisters of Battle, and then I had orcs as well for my third. I had a couple different Space Marines. I had Dark Angels, and then I had Salamander army as well. I just like the color green, so that gravitated me towards Dark Angels and Salamanders to begin with. Salamanders were my first army, but I fell in love with the Dark Angels, so that was my second army, and then I went into Sisters of Battle after that, and then finally wanted to have some more fun, so I just put a orc army out there as well. So all of that. So that's cool. It's great to see you back on track, Sam. Looking forward to your future videos. Absolutely. I'm going to be starting my own channel as well. So if you're interested in that, just give me an email at flipsideobg@gmail.com. flipsideobg@gmail.com. I'll give you more information about that. I don't want to take time here to do that. So I think we're done, though. We are finished. We are complete. And I'm going to finish these guys up as soon as we get out of here. But I'm going to let you guys and girls go. Thank you for joining me. I certainly appreciate it. Luke, it's good to see you. Gaming with ADHD. So you like the Trader Legions. Pish posh. I just like the way they look, man. They look awesome. They look so cool. So that is it. I want to thank everybody for joining me. It has been a super fun time. I want to thank for the interaction that's been here. And we'll definitely look forward to you. Give me an email at that other email that I mentioned earlier if you'd like more information about my personal channel. Then I'll be getting started here in a couple of weeks. And we'll go from there. Thanks so much for joining you. Good to see you too, Luke. Do a painting stream together on my channel one day. I am streaming again. Super. That sounds like an awesome idea. I will contact you, Luke. Anybody else, let me know. And we're going to get on out of here. Thanks for joining me. I certainly appreciate it. We're going to get out. We'll see you guys and gals on the flip side. Cheers, Clyde. See you later. Take care.